What if the most powerful thing you can do right now is absolutely nothing? Not another message, not another explanation, not another attempt to remind her that you still exist. Just time. Because when you keep appearing, you never give silence the opportunity to speak. And silence has a strange power. At first, she may barely notice it. She's busy. She's distracted. She assumes you'll eventually reach out. Maybe she's even expecting your name to appear on her phone. But then another day passes. And you don't. Another day. Still nothing. And slowly, something changes. Not necessarily because she's falling apart, but because the familiar pattern has been interrupted. She was accustomed to your presence, your messages, your attention, your availability. Now there's a gap. And the human mind notices gaps. It starts asking questions. Why hasn't he contacted me? Has he moved on? Is he okay? Does he still care? And sometimes the most powerful question is the one you don't answer. What if I actually lost him? But understand this carefully. Time isn't a weapon. You aren't staying away to punish her. You aren't trying to make her suffer. You aren't counting the hours until she becomes desperate enough to call. That's still chasing, just from a distance. Real detachment is different. You step away because you refuse to force an outcome. You allow her to experience her own thoughts without constantly interrupting them with your presence. Because if you keep sending messages, she never has to wonder. If you keep checking in, she never has to experience your absence. If you keep explaining yourself, she never has to sit alone with the questions created by the separation. And that's why time can reveal what pressure hides. Distance creates a different environment. Without constant contact, emotions can settle. Memories can surface. The mind can compare what it expected with what actually happened. She may remember a conversation, a laugh, a moment when she felt understood. Something ordinary that suddenly feels significant because you're no longer there to create new distractions. But here's the part you need to hear. Don't sit around waiting for that reaction. Because the moment you start thinking, how many days until she misses me? You've turned distance into another form of obsession. You're physically away, but emotionally, you're still standing beside her, still watching, still waiting, still hoping. That's not freedom. So let time work without monitoring the clock. Wake up and live your life. Work on your goals. Take care of your body. Spend time with people who value you. Build something. Learn something. Become someone whose life doesn't stop simply because another person walked away. And if she eventually feels your absence, that's her experience. If she reaches out, you'll decide what to do then. If she doesn't, you'll still have moved forward. That's the beauty of genuine distance. It gives both people information. She discovers what your absence feels like, and you discover who you are when you're no longer chasing her presence. So don't use time to break her. Use time to reveal the truth and rebuild yourself. And then something happens that most people don't expect. When your presence disappears, the world around her doesn't stop. Her life continues. She goes to work. She talks to friends. She laughs. She stays busy. From the outside, everything may look completely normal, but ordinary moments can carry unexpected memories, a song, a familiar place, a phrase you used to say, a restaurant you visited together, a quiet moment at the end of the day when there are fewer distractions. Suddenly, something reminds her of you. And this is one of the strange things about absence. When someone is constantly present, their presence can become part of the background of your life. You don't necessarily question it. You simply expect it. You know they'll probably message. You know they'll probably respond. You know they're there. But when that pattern disappears, the mind notices the missing piece, and that's when questions can begin. Why isn't he reaching out? Has something changed? Did he finally move on? Was I wrong about what I thought would happen? Maybe she doesn't consciously ask these questions. Maybe they appear for only a few seconds. But the important thing is that she now has space to process the relationship without your constant involvement. And that space can bring memories forward. Not because you're forcing them, not because you're manipulating her, but because the mind naturally revisits experiences that once carried emotional significance. This is why chasing can sometimes work against you. If you keep showing up every time she begins to wonder about you, you immediately provide an answer. She wonders where you are. And there you are. She feels a moment of curiosity. And your message arrives. She begins thinking about the relationship. And you start another conversation. The question disappears because you've answered it for her. But when you remain quiet, she has to sit with the question. And sometimes that's where emotional clarity begins. But don't make the mistake of assuming that every memory means she wants you back. Nostalgia isn't commitment. Missing someone isn't the same as being ready for a relationship. A memory can make someone emotional without changing their decision. So don't build an entire future around the possibility that she's thinking about you. Let her thoughts belong to her. Your responsibility is to understand what the distance is revealing to you. Maybe you realize how much of your identity became connected to her attention. Maybe you notice how often you were checking your phone. Maybe you discover that you were constantly trying to predict her emotions instead of living your own life. That's valuable information. Because distance isn't only something she experiences. You experience it too. And while she may be remembering your presence, you can begin remembering yourself, the person you were before the relationship, the goals you neglected, the friends you stopped seeing, the confidence you allowed to depend on another person's approval, the routines that made you feel strong. This is where time becomes powerful. It doesn't guarantee that she'll return. It doesn't guarantee regret. It doesn't guarantee that she'll suddenly realize what she lost. What it does guarantee is an opportunity for both people to see the relationship without constant emotional noise. And if she eventually reaches out, you'll have more clarity about how you want to respond. If she doesn't, you'll still have gained something priceless, your own life back. So don't chase the memories she may be having. Let her experience them in her own time. And use your time to become someone who no longer needs to be remembered to feel valuable. And this is where your greatest temptation begins. You start wondering what she's doing without you. Is she missing you? Is she thinking about you? Is she checking your profile? Did she tell her friends about you? Is she regretting what happened? And suddenly, even though you're not contacting her, you're still emotionally chasing her every single day. You're checking her social media. You're looking for hidden meanings in her posts. You're asking mutual friends questions you pretend are casual. You're analyzing when she's online. You see one small signal and your mind builds an entire story around it. But stop. You don't actually know what's happening inside her mind. And the more you try to investigate it, the more power you give the uncertainty, because now your physical distance means nothing. You're away from her, but mentally you're still living inside her world. That's not what this process is supposed to be. The purpose of stepping away is not to monitor the consequences. It's to create enough distance for reality to reveal itself. Think about it. If you plant a seed today and dig it up tomorrow to see whether it's growing, you destroy the very process you're waiting for. Some things require time precisely because they cannot be forced. Emotions are like that. You cannot force someone to miss you. You cannot force regret. You cannot force clarity. And you certainly cannot force love. The moment you try to control those things, you become trapped by them. So when your mind starts asking, what's happening to her? Bring the question back to yourself. What is happening to me? Am I becoming calmer? Am I sleeping better? Am I focusing on my work? Am I reconnecting with friends? Am I becoming physically stronger? Am I learning to enjoy my own company again? Those questions give you something real to work with, because you can control your behavior. You can control where you place your attention. You can control whether you send another message. You can control whether you spend 2 hours scrolling through her profile. You can control whether you let one photograph destroy your entire evening. That is where your power exists, not inside her mind, inside your own. And here's something else. If she truly misses you, you don't need to discover it before she tells you. If she genuinely wants to reconnect, she has the ability to make that intention known. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not immediately, but eventually, meaningful desire creates movement. So let her movement, or lack of movement, give you information. Don't manufacture evidence. Don't interpret every coincidence as destiny. Don't turn silence into a secret message. Sometimes silence is simply silence, and that's okay. Because you don't need to know what she's feeling in order to move forward. You don't need to know whether she's struggling. You don't need to know whether she's sleeping peacefully. You don't need to know whether she regrets losing you. Your life doesn't have to wait for those answers. There is a strange freedom that comes when you stop trying to enter someone else's thoughts. You realize that your attention is valuable, and every minute you spend obsessing over someone else's emotional state is a minute you're not investing in your own future. So let the distance exist. Don't stalk the silence. Don't investigate the absence. Don't chase the emotional storm you imagine is happening behind a closed door. Step back completely enough to hear your own thoughts again. Because the goal isn't to make her fall apart without you. The goal is to become so grounded that whatever she chooses, you don't fall apart either. And while you're waiting for time to reveal what she feels, something even more important is happening. Time is changing you. At first, you may think the entire purpose of distance is to make her notice your absence, but eventually, you realize that the deeper purpose was to make you notice your own life again. Because when you're emotionally attached to someone, your world can quietly become smaller. You start organizing your days around their attention. You check your phone before you get out of bed. You wonder whether she'll respond. You adjust your mood according to whether she seems interested or distant. And without realizing it, another person's behavior begins controlling your emotional temperature. Distant interrupts that pattern. Suddenly, you have empty space, and at first, that space hurts. But if you don't rush to fill it with another message, another relationship, or endless distractions, something surprising can happen. You begin rebuilding. You remember the goals you put aside. You start exercising again. You reconnect with friends. You become serious about your work. You discover hobbies you forgot about. You start taking care of your appearance. You begin sleeping better. And slowly, the person you were before the relationship starts coming back. Except now, you're more aware, more experienced, more emotionally disciplined. That's the transformation time can give you. And here's the part nobody talks about. If she does eventually return, you don't want to meet her as the same person who was desperately waiting. You want to meet her as someone who has grown. Because imagine she sends a message after weeks of silence. Hey, I've been thinking about you. If you're still emotionally dependent on that message, your entire world can change instantly. You become excited. You forget the pain. You want to rush back into the old dynamic, but if you've used the distance wisely, you can pause. You can ask yourself, do I actually want this relationship again? Not, does she still want me? Not, how do I make sure she doesn't leave? But, is this connection healthy for the person I'm becoming? That is a completely different question, because time may change her feelings. But it can also change yours. Maybe you discover that you don't want the same relationship anymore. Maybe you realize that you were attached to the memory of who she was, rather than the reality of who she is. Maybe you recognize that you accepted things you shouldn't have accepted, simply because you were afraid of losing her. And maybe you discover something even better. You can love someone without needing to return to them. That's maturity. So don't waste your distance sitting beside your phone waiting for her to break. Build, grow, improve. Create a life that feels meaningful without requiring another person's approval. And don't do it so she notices. Do it because you deserve to become stronger. If she eventually comes back, you'll have the clarity to decide. If she doesn't, you won't have lost yourself waiting. Either way, you win something more valuable than her attention. You regain control of your own life, because the longer you stay away, the less important it becomes what she's doing, and the more important it becomes who you're becoming. And then, after enough time has passed, something you never expected may happen. She reaches out. Maybe it's a simple message. Hey. Maybe she asks how you've been. Maybe she sends something that reminds you of an old memory. Or maybe she suddenly wants to see you. And your heart jumps because you have imagined this moment 100 times. But this is where you have to be careful. Her return is not the same thing as her transformation. A message proves only one thing. She contacted you. That's it. It doesn't automatically prove that she regrets everything. It doesn't prove that she is ready for commitment. It doesn't prove that the problems between you have disappeared. And it certainly doesn't mean you should immediately give her everything she once had. This is where emotional discipline matters. Because when you have been waiting for someone, even the smallest amount of attention can feel enormous. A simple, "I miss you," can make you forget months of confusion. A late-night conversation can make you believe everything is different. But emotions are not evidence. Pause are evidence. So if she comes back, don't punish her. Don't act cold just to make her chase harder. Don't try to make her jealous. And don't play psychological games. Instead, stay calm. Listen. Let her explain why she reached out. Then watch what she does afterward. Does she continue communicating? Does she make an effort? Does she acknowledge what happened? Does she take responsibility for her part? Does she respect your boundaries? Does she actually want to rebuild something healthier? Those questions matter more than how emotional the first conversation feels, because nostalgia can bring people together for a night. Loneliness can bring people together for a message. Curiosity can bring someone back for a conversation. But only genuine intention can sustain a relationship. And that's why you shouldn't rush. Let trust rebuild gradually. Let consistency earn access. Let her actions answer the questions that words cannot. You don't have to decide everything immediately. You can be open without being desperate. You can be kind without becoming available to every demand. You can care without surrendering your standards. And you should never feel guilty for taking your time, because if the connection is genuine, patience won't destroy it. Healthy interest can survive a reasonable pace. In fact, a slower pace may reveal more than rushing ever could. You'll see whether she truly wants you in her life or simply wants the comfort of knowing you're still available. Those are two very different things. And if she disappears again, don't chase. Don't send 5 follow-up messages. Don't try to convince her to stay. Take the behavior as information. You cannot build a stable relationship by repeatedly rescuing a connection from one person's lack of effort. 2 people have to participate. So when she returns, don't ask only, "Does she still have feelings for me?" Ask something much more powerful. Has anything actually changed? Because feelings can return overnight. Character is revealed over time, and if nothing has changed, going back simply recreates the same story with different dialogue. That's not what you want. You want something better. So let time test the connection. Let her actions prove the words. And if she truly wants to rebuild, she won't need you to carry the entire relationship on your shoulders. She'll meet you halfway. Because the goal was never to make her come back. It was to become wise enough to know what to do if she does. And now you reach the final truth. The goal was never to make her fall apart. It was never to sit in silence and imagine her suffering without you. Because if your entire strategy is built around making someone regret losing you, then you're still emotionally controlled by that person. You're still waiting for her reaction, still measuring your worth by whether she comes back. Real strength is different. You step away and you rebuild. You stop chasing answers. You stop monitoring her life. You stop asking what she's feeling every hour of the day. And eventually, you realize something. You are okay if she reaches out. You can listen without losing yourself. If she doesn't, you can continue without resentment. Her decision can matter to you without defining you. That's the real transformation. Maybe time makes her remember you. Maybe it makes her question her decision. Maybe it changes nothing for her. You don't need to control the outcome. You only need to control what you do with the time you've been given. Use it to become calmer, stronger, more focused, more independent, more honest about what you actually want from love. Because one day, you may look back and realize that the greatest thing distance gave you wasn't her regret. It was your own clarity. And if she ever returns, don't ask whether she finally realized your value. Ask whether the relationship can now meet the standards of the person you've become. Let time reveal her choices. Let time reveal yours. And most importantly, let time rebuild you.